The real revolution isn't digital, it's who gets to lead it. Welcome to the Pink Parachute Diaries podcast, where we proudly amplify the voices of Black women who are making waves in their respective fields. Today, I want to share with you insights from an extraordinary conversation I had with Shafiah Khabeerah, a visionary leader whose work is fundamentally reshaping how we understand digital economies, inclusion, and the transformative power of strategic investment. Shafia Khabeerah isn't just observing change from the sidelines. They are architecting it, building bridges where walls once stood, creating pathways for Black professionals and entrepreneurs to not just participate in global markets, but to lead them, to define them, to transform them. Their insights challenge everything we think we know about economic empowerment. And what I learned from our conversation has the power to change how you see your own potential, your own industry, your own role in shaping the future. Let me start with something that might shake up your thinking. When we talk about digital economies, when we talk about technological transformation, we almost always focus on the wrong thing. We talk about the apps, the platforms, the algorithms, the artificial intelligence, the blockchain, the innovation. We get dazzled by the technology itself, by the shiny objects, by the next big thing that promises to disrupt everything. But here's what Shafia Khabeerah revealed to me, and what Malaysia's digital transformation is proving every single day. The real story, the story that actually matters, is not about the technology at all. It's about the people. More specifically, it's about who gets access, who gets opportunity, who gets to lead. And that changes everything. Malaysia's digital economy is not just a story of rapid technological growth, it's a testament, a living, breathing example of how strategic investments and inclusive policies can empower underrepresented professionals, including Black entrepreneurs, to thrive in global markets. And I want you to really hear this because this is the counterintuitive truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The technology doesn't create the transformation, the intentional inclusion does. The deliberate removal of barriers does. The strategic investment in people who have been locked out does. Think about that for a moment. We live in a world where Black women are consistently handed pink slips, while underperforming counterparts receive golden parachutes. We live in a world where talent is abundant, but opportunity is scarce, where brilliance is overlooked because it doesn't fit a narrow definition of who belongs at the table. We live in a world where the same gatekeepers who failed upward for decades are still deciding who gets funded, who gets promoted, who gets a seat at the table. And yet, halfway around the world, Malaysia is showing us a different way. They're demonstrating that rapid technological growth and intentional inclusion are not opposing forces. They are, in fact, the very ingredients for sustainable, transformative, revolutionary success. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening on the ground. Because the numbers tell a story that should make every single one of us sit up and pay attention. In 2025, the Malaysia Digital Initiative attracted 42.6 billion ringgit in investments by mid-year. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's just a number. That's just capital flowing to another tech hub. But here's what that number actually represents. It represents a fundamental shift in who gets access to capital. It represents a declaration that when you create the right conditions, and when you remove barriers and build bridges, when you stop asking people to fit into broken systems and instead redesign the systems themselves, Capital flows towards opportunity, real opportunity, inclusive opportunity. And here's the part that should make every corporation, every venture capital firm, every government agency lean in and listen. This wasn't just about attracting money for the sake of attracting money. This was about catalyzing growth for entrepreneurs and professionals in tech, particularly those from underrepresented groups who had historically been locked out of access to capital and global networks. The very people who had been told no for decades, the very people who had been overlooked, underestimated, undervalued, those are the people who are now driving Malaysia's digital transformation. Before this initiative took hold, Black professionals and minority entrepreneurs in Malaysia faced the same challenges we see everywhere: lack of access, lack of networks, lack of capital. The doors were closed, and the keys were held by gatekeepers who didn't see the value in diversity, who didn't understand that exclusion isn't just morally wrong, it's economically stupid. But Malaysia made a choice, a deliberate, strategic, courageous choice. They implemented government led incentives specifically designed to level the playing field. They created mentorship programs that connected emerging entrepreneurs with established leaders. They forged international partnerships with a laser focus on inclusion, not as a buzzword, not as a checkbox, but as a core economic strategy. And the results? Let me tell you about the results, because this is where the story gets really exciting. There was a significant increase in participation by Black professionals and minority entrepreneurs with measurable contributions to the nation's GDP. Not symbolic contributions, not token participation, measurable economic impact. By the end of 2025, Malaysia's digital economy is on track to contribute 25.5% to GDP. They achieved 125% quarter on quarter investment growth, 125%. And they set a regional example that is now inspiring similar initiatives in neighboring countries across Southeast Asia and beyond. This is what good looks like. This is what happens when policy meets purpose, when investment meets intention, when we stop talking about diversity as a nice to have and start treating it as the economic imperative it truly is. This is what happens when we stop asking underrepresented professionals to work twice as hard for half the recognition and instead remove the barriers that were never supposed to be there in the first place. Now, let me tell you about someone who embodies this transformation in a way that should inspire every single person listening right now. Arifa Sharifuddin, a key figure in Malaysia's digital policy, championed programs that prioritize inclusion and mentorship for minority entrepreneurs. But here's what makes their story so powerful. Arafa's journey from legal practice to tech policy leadership was marked by one unwavering focus: empowering marginalized communities. They didn't take the safe path, they didn't play by the old rules. They saw a system that was broken, that was leaving brilliant people behind, and they decided to do something about it. Arafa faced institutional inertia. They faced skepticism about the value of diversity in tech leadership. They faced people who said, "This is how we've always done it. Why should we change now?" But Arafa didn't back down. They didn't soften their message. They didn't compromise on their vision. Instead, they advocated for evidence based policy changes. They established platforms for minority voices in digital strategy sessions. They made it impossible to ignore the economic case for inclusion, and the outcomes speak for themselves. Increased representation of Black and minority professionals in digital policymaking and entrepreneurship, successful forums and pilot programs that improved access to digital resources for underrepresented groups. And perhaps most importantly, they helped reshape national attitudes toward diversity, influencing broader regional policy trends that are now being studied and replicated around the world. This is leadership. This is what it looks like when someone uses their position not to maintain the status quo, not to protect their own privilege, but to dismantle broken systems and build something better in their place. This is what it looks like when someone understands that true power isn't about holding on to what you have, it's about using what you have to lift others up. But here's where the story gets even more powerful, even more instructive for those of us who are trying to create change in our own industries and communities. In November 2025, Farlena Saeed moderated a landmark forum that brought together diverse digital entrepreneurs, including Black professionals, to discuss inclusion in Malaysia's tech ecosystem. Now, on the surface, this might sound like just another conference, just another panel discussion, just another networking event. But what happened in that room was revolutionary. The challenge was clear and daunting. How do you bridge the gap between established tech leaders who have access to everything and emerging minority entrepreneurs who have been locked out of those networks? How do you create real connection, real collaboration, real change, not just performative allyship or surface level diversity initiatives? Farlena understood something crucial. Change doesn't happen in boardrooms alone. It doesn't happen through policy documents or mission statements. It happens through human connection, through storytelling, through creating spaces where people who have been told they don't belong can see themselves as leaders, as innovators, as the architects of the future. So, Farlena facilitated open dialogue. They organized collaborative workshops. They created networking sessions focused on practical solutions for inclusion, not abstract conversations about diversity, but concrete strategies for opening doors, sharing resources, building bridges. And what happened next should be a blueprint for every industry, every company, every community that claims to care about inclusion. Mentorship networks were strengthened. Visibility for Black entrepreneurs in Malaysia's digital economy increased dramatically. New partnerships were formed between established companies and emerging startups. Businesses were launched that might never have existed without those connections. Policy recommendations were adopted at the national level, changing the rules of the game for everyone who comes after. And there was a measurable increase in minority led startups and digital leadership roles. This is the power of community driven action. This is what happens when we create spaces where Black professionals are not just invited to the table as guests, but are leading the conversation, setting the agenda, defining what success looks like. So, what are the key insights that I want you to carry with you? What are the takeaways that should fundamentally change how you think about your own role in creating a more inclusive economy? First, and I cannot emphasize this enough, strategic investment and policy support are critical for creating an inclusive digital economy. Malaysia's approach demonstrates that targeted initiatives can open doors for Black professionals and entrepreneurs to access global opportunities. This is not about charity. This is not about handouts. This is not about lowering standards or giving anyone something they haven't earned. This is about removing systemic barriers that were designed to keep people out. This is about, recognizing that when you invest in talent that has been overlooked, when you create pathways for people who have been locked out, everyone benefits. The individuals thrive, the communities flourish, the economies grow. This is not a zero sum game. This is about expanding the pie, not fighting over the same small slice. Second, rapid growth in digital sectors creates new pathways for leadership and innovation among underrepresented groups. The surge in digital investments in Malaysia has led to more seats at the table for diverse voices, challenging traditional gatekeeping in business and technology. And here's what's so important about this: when industries grow, when economies expand, there is room for new leaders, but only if we are intentional about who gets access to those opportunities. Growth alone doesn't create equity. Intentional, strategic, courageous action creates equity. And that action has to come from people who are willing to use their influence, their networks, their resources to open doors that have been closed for too long. Third, empowerment comes not just from technology, but from intentional community building and mentorship. Malaysia's progress highlights the importance of networks and support systems that nurture Black talent and amplify their impact on the economy. Technology is a tool. It's a powerful tool, but it's the human connections, the mentorship, the guidance of the community, the relationships built on trust and mutual support that truly transforms lives and creates lasting change. You can have all the apps and platforms and algorithms in the world, but if people don't have access to the networks and mentorship that help them navigate those systems, the technology alone won't create equity. Here's what I want you to understand with every fiber of your being: the story of Malaysia's digital economy is not just a story about one country on the other side of the world. It's a blueprint, it's a roadmap, it's proof of concept for what's possible when we choose inclusion over exclusion, when we choose investment over indifference, when we choose to see Black professionals and entrepreneurs not as risks to be managed or problems to be solved, but as the drivers of innovation and growth that they truly are. We talk a lot on the Pink Parachute Diaries about the challenges Black women face in corporate America, the systemic obstacles, the glass ceilings, the pink slips handed out while others receive golden parachutes. And those conversations are necessary. We must name the problems. We must shine a light on the injustices. We must call out the systems that were designed to keep us out, but we must also do something else. We must show what's possible. We must celebrate the triumphs. We must share the stories of what happens when barriers are removed and Black women are given the resources, the support, and the opportunities they deserve. Shafiah Khabeerah's work and the transformation happening in Malaysia is proof that another way is possible. It's proof that when we invest in Black professionals, when we create inclusive policies, when we build mentorship networks and open doors to global markets, everyone wins. The individuals thrive, the communities flourish, the economies grow, the entire society benefits from the contributions of people who were previously locked out. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night: this doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen because we hope for it or wish for it or wait for someone else to make it happen. It happens because leaders like Arafah Sharifuddin and Farlina Mansaid and Shafia Khabeerah make it happen. It happens because they refuse to accept the status quo. It happens because they use their influence, their networks, their platforms, their power to create change. It happens because they understand that the greatest privilege you can have is the ability to open doors for others. And that brings me to the most important part of this entire conversation, because this is not just a story about what's happening in Malaysia. This is not just a celebration of what, yeah, other people are doing in other places. This is a mirror. This is a challenge. This is a call to action for every single person hearing my voice right now. Whether you're a Black woman climbing the corporate ladder, fighting for recognition, navigating systems that were not designed for you to succeed, whether you're an entrepreneur building your own business, creating your own opportunities, refusing to wait for permission from gatekeepers who will never see your value. Whether you're a leader with the power to shape policy and allocate resources, someone who controls access to capital and networks and opportunities, you have a role to play in this transformation. You have a choice to make. You have power that you may not even realize you have. So, here's what I want you to ask yourself. And I don't want you to answer this quickly. I don't want you to give me the easy answer. I want you to sit with this question. I want you to let it challenge you. I want you to let it make you uncomfortable. How will you use your influence and networks to ensure that Black professionals and entrepreneurs are not just included, but are leading the next wave of digital transformation in your industry? What doors will you open? What barriers will you remove? What investments will you make? What mentorship will you provide? What policies will you champion? What conversations will you start? What systems will you dismantle? What futures will you help build? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The digital economy is growing, the opportunities are expanding, the future is being built right now. And the question that will define the next decade is not whether technology will transform our world. It will. The question is who will have access, who will lead, who will thrive, who will shape that future. And the answer to that question depends entirely on the choices we make today, the investments we prioritize, the policies we implement, the networks we build, the doors we open, the barriers we remove. Malaysia is showing us what's possible. Shafiah Khabeerah is showing us what leadership looks like. Arifa Sharifuddin is showing us what courage looks like. Farlina Mansaid is showing us what community building looks like. And now the question is, what will you show us? Will you be someone who maintains the status quo, who protects your own privilege, who stays silent when you see injustice? Or will you be someone who uses your power to create change, who opens doors for others, who refuses to accept a world where talent is abundant, but opportunity is scarce? The sky's the limit, but only if we build the ladders, only if we create the pathways, only if we do the intentional, strategic, courageous work of making inclusion not just a buzzword, not just a diversity statement on a website, but a lived reality that transforms lives and economies and societies. So let's choose inclusion. Let's choose empowerment. Let's choose to be the architects of change in our industries, our communities, our world. Let's choose to celebrate and uplift Black women who are making waves in their respective fields. Let's choose to challenge every system that was designed to keep us out. Let's choose to build something better. Let's choose to create a world where Black women's accomplishments are celebrated and their potential is unleashed. The revolution isn't coming. It's here. It's happening right now in Malaysia. It's happening in boardrooms and startups and policy sessions around the world. And the only question that matters is, are you going to be part of it? Are you going to lead it? Are you going to use everything you have to make sure that the next generation doesn't face the same barriers you did? Because that's what this is really about. It's not about technology. It's not about digital transformation. It's about who gets to lead that transformation. It's about who gets to shape the future. It's about who gets access to opportunity. And it's about whether we have the courage to dismantle the systems that have kept brilliant people locked out for far too long. Malaysia has shown us the way. Now it's our turn. Now it's your turn. What will you do with that knowledge? What will you do with your power? What will you do to ensure that Black professionals and entrepreneurs are not just included in the digital economy, but are leading it, defining it, transforming it? The answer to that question will determine everything. So choose wisely, choose courageously, choose to be part of the revolution because the sky's the limit and it's time we all reached it together